What is a script? Well, what do you mean by a script? What isn't what I mean by a script? What I mean by a script is really the whole shooting match. The whole idea and structure and some commentary, if it's got a commentary, voiceover, the storyline, everything. Most of you won't write all that down, but you might write little bits of it down, and some of it's in your head, and some of it's on your timeline in a sense, as to when you go to use your timeline. But for me, a script is everything, and that's because I used to have to think that way when I did it professionally, for want of a better word, when I wrote and researched and wrote video scripts for business films and things. Some hints of which you might see tonight. So a script is what the film is, in my view, and the key thing that you have not to do when you're writing, when you're making a documentary, is not to be bland. Many people, what is a documentary? A documentary I'm talking about really is almost anything other than a drama. It could be a holiday film, a travel type film, it could be anything, an event, anything at all that is based on sort of fact, really. Right, so, right, you've got to sell your subject to the viewer. Do not assume your audience wants to know. So the point is, I think a lot of our films, especially let's say a holiday film, or travel films, they kind of may bring a film to the club and they assume the audience wants to know. And that's fatal. You should never assume the audience wants to know. In fact, it's better to assume the audience doesn't want to know. So you have to sell the subject to the audience. Now that often means putting on an introduction. And we'll talk about introductions later, because introductions are critical. Supposing you go to a Scottish island for a holiday, and it's full of this atmosphere that you expect of a Scottish island, and it's a bit misty, and the people in the pub are very friendly, and you have a wonderful time, and you go on these great long beaches and things, strands, and it's just a little bit of magic. And your neighbour says to you, how do you get on? How do you get on? And you tell him all of that. Oh, it was great, it was fantastic. Mountains, mist, blah, blah, blah. And then you make your film and you say, the island of Skye lies just inland in the Hebrides, just off the coast of Scotland. And your audience is thinking, I don't know, I couldn't care less. Why do I want to know where the Isle of Skye is? Why don't you start giving a little montage, if you like, of the mysteries and wonderful effects, and even some few words about it, of getting the atmosphere across straight to your audience. So now you've made him want to know more. Okay? I had to do that even with my business films, because I'd imagine that, certainly with a training film or a promotional film or something, you have to imagine that people go to work and they're brought into a kind of projection room at 10 o'clock in the morning, and they have to sit and watch your bloody film. Oh God. So you've got to make it interesting. Some of you will have had to do that. Anybody had to do that in their business, where they had to watch a film early in the morning because they're at a seminar or something? You know, I'm sure people have. Their hands are going up, you see. Yeah. And I had to make some of these films, and so, you know,
well,
everybody.
You were to blame then.
Sorry,
you were to blame.
Well, on those kind of little films, I say little as opposed to television, about a quarter of the budget is spent on the introduction, the first minute, say. Generally, that's the sort of thing you could allow for. And that's how important they thought it was, just to get them interested. You know, even though you ought to be interested because it's your line of business. But anyway, in our case, you bring a film to the club, and I think you have a duty to make it interesting to the other members. It's all very well being self-indulgent, making your own film, which is satisfactory to you, and I'll go and try it out on the members. But you don't make any attempt to interest the members. You say, this is what I found when I did this, or this is the event on Saturday, whatever it was. This is it. So what? Why are you telling me? You know? So don't assume that just because you're bringing it to the club, everybody's bloody well interested, because they're not. Why should they be? I do swear, because I get head up about it. So, I'm now going to show you a film, which probably throws the computer off now entirely. I'm going to show you 3 minutes of a film only. It's a film from television. The reason I'm showing this to you is basically the mix of voiceover and pictures, and more importantly, where there is no voiceover, the gaps, the pauses, which are critical, because most of you will not script the pauses, but the pauses are as vital as anything else in the film to make it watchable. This is a unique sort of voiceover, which as amateurs I think we wouldn't dare try. Wow, what is it? What's the magic? Well, it's quite simple. It's simply tons of pauses, huge pauses. Pictures are ordinary-ish. It's basically the Highlands of Scotland. There are some nice animal pictures, but it's made a lot of it's mountains, as you've just seen, the brief hint of. Taken from helicopters or drones and things, so they're not the sort of pictures we can all have access to, but nevertheless they're not most dramatic in themselves. But the key thing is the atmosphere in the voiceover, the pauses, the way it's spoken, and the fact that sentences get split up with a huge gap in the middle of them. So the voiceover will say something, 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 pause, picture, 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 and 10 seconds further on, and blah, 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 or but, so and so, so and so. Now, you won't spot this on what you're watching, I guarantee you, because it's so cleverly done. I think it's a masterpiece of words, space, giving you time, easiness on the viewer, and atmosphere. The voiceover is by Ewan McGregor, or it's spoken by, so, and it's just, I just love it.
Scoured by ice and weathered by storms, 20,000 square miles of rugged coastline, lochs and mountains. On the face of it, it looks bleak and lifeless, but wildlife is thriving in this unforgiving place, if you know where to look. This is Scotland's wild heart, the Highlands. It's October in the Northwest Highlands, and the forests of Glen Affric are flushed with gold. It's a still, crisp, perfect morning. But this is a shallow beauty. With the brief summer now past, the animals of the Highlands are in for the long haul, as they prepare for the lockdown of the Highlands' longest, darkest, and most overwhelming season. It'll be April before the sun rises clear of these peaks again. At these altitudes, heavy snow can arrive in almost any month, and it lies here all year round. But one animal has got what it takes to live here. Once extinct in these mountains, but living and breeding here once again. They're reindeer. Reintroduced in the 1950s, after an absence of over 8,000 years, they're better adapted to these extreme conditions than any other Scottish mammal. Like many of the world's reindeer herds, people look after these animals. But for most of the year, they're left to fend for themselves on these wild hills.
What do you think of that?
Yeah. It makes the pictures more dramatic.
Ah, exactly. Isn't that what the voiceover is meant to do? Yeah, it does. Anybody like it?
The difference between watching professionalism like that
I know.
and a 10-minute maximum before we put everybody to sleep at the same.
Yeah.
You can't necessarily afford to narrate at that speed. You know, you'd need an hour yourself.
It was going to take an hour. I cut about a minute and a third out of that, but I hope you didn't spot it. No, but it shows you what can be done, I think, that with a clever mix of words and a way of delivery which is as important as the words and the pictures, the delivery, which I'm going to talk a bit about later on, if we have time. It starts, scoured by ice, weathered by storms. I think that's a great start. It's not saying where we are or anything like that. What does the Highlands cover, or anything like that. Just, you're looking at rugged landscape, and it's in a nice Scottish burr, scoured by ice and weathered by storms. And then it gives you a bit of fact. 20,000 square miles of rugged coastline, lochs and mountains. On the face of it, it looks bleak and murky, but wildlife is thriving in this unforgiving place. This is Scotland's wild heart, the Highlands. Now, I don't think you can say that flatly. You can't say it absolutely cold without it having some kind of effect. And then we have the title, and then you see pictures of autumn trees. And it says, it's October in the Northwest Highlands, and the forests of Glen Affric are flushed with gold. It's a still, crisp, perfect morning. Pause, 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 all the way. It's often better in a voiceover to list 3 items rather than 2. You can get a rhythm going with 3 items. It's a still, crisp, perfect morning. You could have said, it's a still and crisp morning. A still, crisp morning. But somehow you can spread it out with 3, and you can use the pictures to cover those 3. He does it again, a bit later on. The animals prepare for the lockdown, which is a good phrase, of the Highlands' longest, darkest and most overwhelming season. I think that's a wonderful way of saying overwhelming for winter. It's a real comment. It's not just cold, it's not just icy, which he could have said, icy season. Longest, 3 items again. Longest, darkest, most overwhelming season. Plenty of room and space for pictures. I think you might be wrong, Geoffrey, saying it would take you an hour to say it all. Yeah, but it depends what you want to say. This is mood stuff, and we're trying to create an atmosphere. We're trying to bring the people into the film anyway. That's really the point I'm making. Yes, Ma'am.
I think what you're saying is for club competitions, and if you're doing it something like that on the holiday ones,
Yeah.
if you are doing it at that speed, which obviously that's taken from an hour arbitrary documentary.
Well, yeah.
So obviously you can't, if it's club
Yeah, that's what
competition,
you're
if it's a
saying.
holiday one, you can't do it that speed.
Yeah,
because-
Just wait till
it's
further
like
on
the
in
thing for
the
your
evening.
Yeah.
audience.
Well, I'm saying to you that you can.
Just
And
wait till
your film
further-
can still just be 10 minutes long. But just wait until we get,
we get
further
to
on.
it. We get to it.
We get to all of that. But I just want that to show you what can be done and how Holy of Holies, they split sentences, which I say you probably didn't notice the way you were looking at it. I want to show you something different now, which shouldn't be different in my view. I'm going to show you this because I think it's so horrible. And I'm poisoning your mind before you start against it, which is what I want to do. This is another program that was on telly just before Christmas. It was called Christmas in St. Paul's, which some of you may have seen, and it's a voiceover by Sarah Lancashire, which is not her fault, I don't think, but it might be. I suspect that she couldn't do what Ewan McGregor was doing in that film, what you've just seen. Some people can't do it. Well, fair enough. There's no reason not to try. This is Christmas in St. Paul's. Now, my view about St. Paul's Cathedral is that cathedrals are just as holy and reverential as mountains, in a sense. And I feel the mood for an hour's programme about Christmas in St. Paul's should be similar to the mood we've just seen and heard. But it's a million miles from that. And it starts even, because he's talking about this is a busy time in St. Paul's, the editor has even speeded up all the people running around the church, which is bloody awful, because it's most unchurch-like. When we all walk into a church, especially at a cathedral, a big church, you tend to walk slowly, don't you? And you speak in slightly hushed tones. You can't help it. You just do, you know. And you're very sort of, yeah, you walk around looking like this. Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant, isn't it? Yeah. And you mutter to people. And, you know, if you're with anybody. And you might even if you don't know. But it doesn't capture any of that atmosphere at all.
It's Christmas, and St. Paul's Cathedral is gearing up for the busiest time of the year. With tens of thousands of visitors expected to attend an extraordinary array of special Christmas events, the pressure's on for the team, tasked with making it all happen.
We use a lot more wafers at Christmas. I think last year we had about 2,000 wafers ready.
Happy Christmas.
From the clergy who lead the worship,
We have so many big events in a very small period of time.
to the world-class choristers,
I'm not tired, okay? So don't try and tell me I am.
to the cathedral's 150-strong workforce.
No, other way, no, take the tension off.
It's a little stressful. Everyone's come to hear celebrities read, and there's no celebrities.
My Strictly Come Dancing glitter balls.
For the first time, we've been allowed behind the scenes to film the countdown to Christmas, from the beginning of December right up to the big day itself.
And Jonathan. Is Jonathan here?
This is St. Paul's Cathedral as you've never seen it before. Canon Michael and his team have 17 spectacular services and events to stage. And they've been meeting since early October to ensure that everything goes to plan.
Now, I think that's horrible. You might think, well, it's all right, it got me going. Why do I think it's horrible? Well, I explained a little bit at the beginning, before you saw it. It comes up with all the sort of cliches. It's building up to the busiest time of the year. Okay. Tens of thousands of visitors expected to attend an extraordinary array of Christmas events. What's extraordinary about Christmas events? We know what Christmas events are. The pressure's on for the team tasked with making it all happen. Tasked? What sort of word is tasked? Then for the first time we've been allowed to, oh come on, don't get away from that crap. You know, as if we've all been to St. Paul's Cathedral, not necessarily at Christmas, but we've been inside these churches, we know what goes on, and there's nothing new. And they've tried to intercut it, editing-wise, with these little sound bites, which are meaningless as we're looking at them, meaningless, but they're just trying to brighten it up. And they have the awful beginning of high-speed people, which I think is a travesty of anything to do with the church. This is St. Paul's Cathedral as you've never seen it before. And I think it's got all these awful words in it, awful phrases, and that's the beginning of it. And I think compare that with the Highlands one, where they've tried to involve you, and here they've just very, very bland. They've told you what it's going to be about, and they've given you quite a lot of excerpts. snippets, if you like, of soundbite, which mean nothing. And frankly, the whole thing went on for an hour like that. It was told you nothing new, I don't think, and kept on having little sound bites which didn't go anywhere, didn't come from anywhere. You couldn't put them together. And that gives you an idea, I think, of what the whole film's about. You might say, well, it was all right, it wasn't bad. But I'm just comparing it with the first one. Yes, sir.
Sorry.
I know you're desperate to say something.
No, I was going to say, don't you also think that what's happening is the script was competing with the pictures for your attention?
Yes.
And instead of adding to, it was competing, and you either got to listen or view as well.
Oh, that's the way with TV documentaries, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but that's not doesn't matter the way it is.
Yeah.
What you're saying.
Yeah. Well, that's another way of putting it. You're quite right. They're competing. Whereas the first time you had time to look at the pictures and to think about what was being said, which was as equally as important. To think about what was being said. Yeah.
David, excuse me. Would you advocate that style of the first film to most films that are narration?
Only in
that are
only in that you have to try to draw people in. I don't think the second one drew them very much, made you very interested, but the first one was desperately trying. And you might say, yes, it was very trying. But you know, you need to get a mood or an atmosphere across. I don't see why you shouldn't try it. I mean, well, I don't mean you personally, because you're, if I may say so, you're pretty good at drawing us into a subject, making us care. But I've judged a lot of films, and so have some of you, I know. The films that will get more points are the ones that say something and have a kind of natural feeling for their subject. I'm talking really tonight about how to make better films. I should have said that early on, not just make any old film, but how to improve the films. You don't have to agree with everything I've said, and clearly not everybody will do, or has done, or does, but I'm just asking you to consider some of the things, and I'm starting in the middle, in a sense, because I've showed you two bits of film which both have sort of aspects to them, which I suggest you could or could not emulate, if you like. Cat Sat on the Mat. Now, we're talking about how you say these things, compared with St. Paul's Cathedral, gabble, 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 flat voice, not at all exciting about what they're going to show, apart from the silly words, this is the first time ever, and you think, yeah. As opposed to the first film, which gave us some atmosphere. And it's the way you say it. How you write it depends on the way you say it. The cat sat on the mat. 6 words. You can make that 4 different meanings if you want it to. The way you say it. You can make it make 6 meanings. But let's take 4. The cat sat on the mat. Not the dog. Not the guinea pig. The cat sat on the mat. Didn't stand beside it, he sat on it. The cat sat on the mat. On the mat, not elsewhere. The cat sat on the mat. The bloody mat. Not the table, but the mat. See, 6 different meanings, 4 different meanings, and if you wanted to add the cat sat on the mat, that's the cat we're talking about, that's meaning number 5. And so it goes on, if the cat sat on the mat, i.e. that special mat that we've been talking about, bloody cat's on it. So there are 6 meanings if you want it to be, but actually, let's say basically 4. The cat sat on the mat. That's how difficult it is to get your voiceover across in the right way. And when you're writing it, you have to speak it out at the same time to make sure that you and the words, or whoever's going to speak your words and the words, get across the right meaning. You don't have to write a lot of words to mean something. And that's the whole point about a script writing, isn't it? A documentary, voiceover script writing. Let's just imagine now, can you go on to slide 8? Imagine, well, don't have to imagine, there was a series, compared with St. Paul's, a series 2 or 3 years ago about Westminster Abbey. There were 4 programmes, and this is how it started. Westminster Abbey, central to the Church of England, but an oddity. Vast, truly ancient, yet also central to the government of our nation. That's a terrific start. There's no sentence there at all. It's just phrases and words with pauses in between for pictures to illustrate what it's talking about. And getting across a huge point. Westminster Abbey is a church peculiar, what's the phrase? Something peculiar. In that it is part of the government. It's part of the constitution, which you wouldn't, doesn't have an archbishop, it has a dean. The dean is key, is the boss of Westminster Abbey. So it's different from any other church, any other cathedral that you've been in Britain, and it's central not only to the Church of England, but to the government. And it says it all there in, I don't know, probably fewer than 20 words, without a sentence. It's brilliant. Because it's a brilliant start. It could have said, you could have said, and if we'd been writing it, this is probably what we would have written. We would have been frightened of starting without a sentence. We would have said, Westminster Abbey is an unusual arm of our nation's heritage. It is central to the Church of England and to the government of the nation, but is separate from both. So we would have tried hard to get across this feeling of its specialness, but we would have had to write it as a sentence, wouldn't we? I think. We would have just felt it, because that's how we write. But you don't need sentences at all. You just need phrases, much punchier, says it so much crisper. And in film, you've got to be punchy and crisp because the pictures are there fighting, as Malcolm says. To some extent, they're fighting with the words, but at the same time, you have to be running a parallel with them. So, and it's got silly phrases in like heritage and unusual arm, you know, overused phrases. So simple words and phrases can get across a lot of statement, an awful lot to say, like about Westminster Abbey. So, where are we now? Number 10? Go to number 10. So how do we make this film more interesting? Having tried to get a start. Well, chronology, which a lot of people, they go on holiday and they think they've got to come back and tell us how it went from A to B, is often the very worst storyline you could have. Think of a film as with a storyline, a thread. Because chronology is boring. I remember once watching a film about Anglesey, and the maker thought he was being clever because we were going to go around the coast of Anglesey and I'm going to show you a map. Right, we're going to go there, boom, 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 boom. And after about 5 minutes, I realised he'd only got from there to there on his bloody map. He's still got to go here. Oh my God, and it was about a 20-minute film. You see, we knew what he was going to do exactly. We knew where he was going to go. And he couldn't go at the speed that I wanted to go. Chronology is, trust me, on your holiday, the chronology very rarely matters 6 months later. If it's your own personal snapshot film, fine, but don't bring it to the club. But if you want to show it as a film of interest that members might find interesting, chronology is going to be boring, I'll tell you. It's predictable. Think of the Sky film and what's most interesting, exciting. So don't always start at the beginning. Start somewhere else, come back to the beginning later on. That's easier said than done, it's not easy. So, how do we do this? A bit of quick, I'm going to run through it quite quickly now. Just a few hints on how to actually lay out how to actually start your voiceover script. Okay? Make lists, first of all. I used to do this for my business films. Make lists. And these lists are about facts, anecdotes, and personal comments. And that's pretty well all you need to make your film. Facts, okay. Let's imagine we go to Corfu. Let's just imagine. Facts about Corfu, which you don't necessarily want many of these, but you know, how big is it? Where is it? Obviously. Earliest known civilization, maybe. History, economy, whatever. Okay, anecdotes. bit more personal, human touch. The British brought cricket to Corfu. The British had a navy there, navy existence there for many, well, 150 years was it? By the 1980s, became very popular with British tourists, and they put timeshares there and had a lot of villas. Personal comments, well, it's cheap, it smells of fish and chips, say, I don't know. But on the other hand, it's green and beautiful and overcrowded, depending on what you want to say about it. And you put all those things together, you mix and match little bits from each list to make whatever you want to do for this sequence of the film. Don't put all the facts together, don't put all your human entity together, humanity together, you're leaving facts for somewhere else. You mix and match them a little bit, which once you try to do it, you'll realise it makes a much more interesting statement or sentence than just one or the other all the time. Don't be afraid of emotion and colour. Go back to film 1 that you saw. Plenty of emotion and colour there, desperately pushing at you, really. All the better for it, in my view, but okay. People say sometimes, some people think, oh no, you shouldn't make exclamations, you shouldn't do this, you should write in sentences and all this stuff. No. Your film is about, whatever it's about human beings. Even if it's about a building, it's about human beings who created that building. Human beings use that building. It's about a building is about people. So, don't forget humanity and emotion and colour. And you can cheat by adding to the effect that you want those pictures to have. Take item 1 again, the film 1, the Highlands film. The voiceover was telling you an awful lot what to think about what you're looking at. He was saying this in the autumn, flushed with gold, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I know it's autumn, yeah. But you can't ignore phrases like flushed with gold. And yeah, that's true. And so, I'm going to play you now on my modern high-tech piece of equipment here. This is fantastic. On a thing like this, you can get 90 minutes of sound, 45 minutes on one side, 45 minutes on the other side. It's brilliant. And you slot it into a machine like this, and it just plays.
Seville is one of the largest cities in Spain, with a population of 397,000. Much of the original Moorish city remains, and there is a Gothic cathedral and a university. Its manufacturing industries include chocolate, soap, perfumes and silks. It's also famous for oranges. And we went to see what else it had to offer.
Did anybody find that at all interesting?
Very good.
You found it good? Yeah? Okay, yeah, fair enough. Everything I'm saying is open to opinions, and you're entitled to either think, no, that's a load of rubbish what he's just said about that, but on the other hand, I quite like what he said about this. So, right, okay, I'm going to play you another version now, and see if you think it's better. Okay? And be honest, you might not think it's better, you might think it's rubbish. Here's another version.
Seville. Is there any one Spanish name so full of atmosphere? Seville, city of oranges, flamenco, sunshine, Moorish history, and mañana. The very heart of all things Spanish, a riot of colour and music and history and Latin excitement. Or is it just another concrete jungle?
Which was the better one?
The second one.
That was a little more attention grabbing, the second one.
That was a little more attention grabbing, yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody agree that the second one, compared with the first one?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was a bit more romantic, so to be honest.
Yes, it was more. Yes, it might appeal to me more than some people. Some people might want the more mundane one, But you thought it was better, the second one? Yeah, you thought it was better.
It was so
Frank thought it was better.
More life in it, yes.
More life, yeah. That's a way of putting it. You thought it was more life in it, Frank. Yeah.
It had so many facts, though, you wouldn't remember them.
No, you couldn't.
So they didn't make an impression, did they?
The first one, yeah.
Yeah, the first one.
You've gone back to the first one, yeah. Yeah. there aren't all that many facts. There's 397,000, but okay. Yeah, but okay, there information as well. Yeah, okay. Yeah, the second one was a much more romantic kind of thing. Yes, more atmospheric, which is colour and emotion. It could have been an introduction to a film. You have to be prepared to brave it out and do it. Not everybody can. I'm going to show you now 2 bits of film. No, not there. It's not on there. Sheila's asking me about a particular slide, and I know it's not there at this stage. Right, I'm going to show. We need to show some film now, Frank. If you can pause between the two, I'd be grateful.
This is Alaska, 2003. The date is important, for it is estimated that great swathes of Alaska, twice the size of Texas, 1/5 the landmass of the rest of the United States, is changing continuously. Glaciers, 5 to 20 or 30 miles long, form and recede much quicker than in the European Alps. In 1749, it was recorded that 3,000 people lived along the shores of this inlet, but glaciers at its head began to reform, gradually filling up the bay, leaving only 300 to 400 people by 1803. Now the glacier is receding again, and the people are returning via the cruise ships. Some of these are so large that they are strictly limited up these precious shores. In the last 123 years, 72 miles of this inlet, called Glacier Bay, have been opened up again. And at the end, the goggle-eyed visitors are faced by 3 huge glaciers, not all receding.
Okay. Anybody like that? Speak up.
Yeah, I liked it, to be honest. I thought the modulation of the speaker.
Yes.
I thought was fine.
Right.
And there was some inflections in it where he emphasised some words and not others.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll throw you a comment opposite. You mentioned 2 dates, and when you mentioned the second one to say that the population had gone down.
Yes.
I'd forgotten what the first date was, so I didn't know
First
how
one was
significant.
2003, and the second one was 1749.
No. No.
All those are 2 dates.
2003 and 1803.
The date was important in 2003.
I could ask you several things from our facts, if you like. I could ask you, how big is Alaska that was given to you
Twice
in
the
the film?
size of Texas.
And
Twice the size of Texas, yeah?
And 5 times the size of the...
And Texas is how large in the rest of the United States?
A fifth of the United
A
States.
fifth? Yeah.
I thought it was too many.
Yeah. And in what year was it recorded that 3,000 people lived in this bay?
1749.
1749, correct? Yeah, yeah. But how many people lived there by 1803?
400.
300.
300 to 400. You're right.
So it's taken 5 people to.
No, I could go on. In the last 123 years, how many miles of this inlet have been opened up?
72.
How many?
72.
72, yeah. Bit hesitant, yeah. Right, so there you are. We could go on, you see.
David, can I just clear something up? I said I liked the way the narration was delivered. I thought there was far too many facts.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. I'm taking all that. I'm not making a personal point, honestly.
No, I know.
I know. I will tell you though that was 78 seconds of film, and there were 12 numbers in it, one every 6 seconds, and of course it's non-stop. It goes on and on. Fact, information. You had no time to look at the pictures, some of which were quite interesting, and even some of the information might have been, the idea of the information was quite interesting. It was spoken at roughly 2.5 words a second, which is the kind of speed that a newsreader aims for. 2.5 words a second, but that's to give you news. They haven't got time to waste, and they've got to go on and on and on until the next bit of film you know, coming up. So it's all carefully geared. But when the film scripts, when the news scripts are being written, that's the rough scale to which they would work, 2.5 words a second. So we won't judge on whether we thought it was good or bad, because it's probably a bit like the egg, good in parts. Here's another version of it.
This is Alaska at the beginning of the 21st century. The time is important because great swathes of frozen Alaska are changing all the time, especially the coastline. Glaciers form and recede much quicker than in the European Alps, partly because they are much lower, often down at sea level. A few hundred years ago, the shores of this inlet had many small settlements. Then glaciers filled it up, and the people left. Now the glacier is receding, and a new kind of humanity, via the cruise ship, is returning. In little more than 100 years, 70 miles of this inlet, now the Glacier Bay National Park, have been opened up. At the end, the visitors are faced by 3 huge glaciers, not all receding.
So, what was how do you prefer that or not prefer it? How do you like it compared with the first one?
Preferred that one.
Better?
Yeah. It gave you time to process the information.
It did.
Gave you time to look at the pictures as well.
Gave you time to look at the pictures. And that meant there was time to put other pictures in. You created a sort of space so that there were certain pictures in there which you didn't see in the first episode, of course. There was also a bit of music. There was a longer introduction going into this breaking ice with the ship. And you saw them in the avalanche, the carving of the glacier. I don't know if it's glacier or glacier. I notice I say glacier in there. Any views? Glacier or glacier?
Glacier. The Fox is glacier mint, so it's got to be
glacier mint. Yeah, I think the Americans say glacier, don't they?
Yeah.
Glacier. Yeah. That piece of film was much longer. It was 100 seconds long as opposed to 78. But I don't think it seemed longer, did it, necessarily? Because you've got time to appreciate everything it's trying to say. Your mind doesn't cut out to any facts or data. There were only 3 numbers in it. There was only 54 seconds of voiceover, so it was almost only half of it was voiceover, which in the first one, about 3/4 of it was voiceover. And yeah, we had more space, didn't we, for illustrative pictures. And it's much better, easier all around, easier watching and easier listening, is it not? You see how important, I said at the beginning, the gaps are, the pauses are. You find the pauses on the timeline when you're editing, but it is what editing is. And you can spread your voiceover out and cut it up and cut it up and cut it up. You can't do it enough times to allow your pictures space. We're going to come into that in a minute. Although we're probably not, because we ought to have a break. So before we do anything else, we'll take the break. So there you are, once upon a time, he showed you some film with a lot of facts in it, and the logical thing to that is, do not flood your film with facts, which a lot of people do, and they can't help it. They think, oh, that's so interesting, and it's in the brochures. Oh yeah, and be careful of figures. Generalize with figures, you know, in the 19th century, medieval, several tons. You don't know what, is it really important that you spell it out that it's 80.5 tons? Or even 80 tons? It usually isn't. If you've got any figure at all, ask yourself, do I really, really, really need to say this? This church was built not in 1459, but in the 15th century. If you want to say early 15th century, because you think that's important, fine. There are certain figures you can't ignore that we all know they're in our culture, like 1066, 1914-18, say. You know, you can't, there's no point fluffing around those. Just say the bloody things, and people know what we're talking about. So, but generally, there are lots of visual pointers you can use in film. You know, signposts and keystones above bridges and things like that give you a date. Saving you voiceover, you don't need to say it. Chris kindly put out a quote from Hitchcock in his promotion for me, in which Hitchcock said, all I need is a good script, good script, good film. I need three things. And Hitchcock also said, if the pictures and the words are saying the same thing, one of them is redundant. You know, which is, it's all obvious and we know it, but it's amazing how these things creep in. Here's a hard one. Pictures provide an impression, words provide facts. Now that's not a hard and fast rule, obviously, but words, your pictures rarely give you many facts at all, to be honest. They don't tell you, they might tell you if it's autumn or winter, as we saw at the beginning. They don't necessarily tell you it's Spain, because Spain looks like Portugal, looks like half a dozen other Mediterranean islands. Speed, no, you often don't know how things are going, how fast they are, unless you're looking at the speedometer. It's very difficult if you're watching Formula 1, for instance, to realise you're going 200 miles an hour into this bend. And colour, yeah, they usually give you, pictures will usually give you colour. Place, as I've said, not obvious. Time, taste, spell, history, background, no, you don't get any of that from your pictures. So your pictures will provide an impression, and they will give you a little bit of fact, but it's the words that will give you most facts. Don Groom, the sainted, honoured Don Groom, and I mean that in a good way, that he, you know, was BBC cameraman for 40 years, and he used to say, words make sense of the pictures. And he, you know, pictures were his business, but he knew the words make sense of the pictures. However few the words are, but you're going to need them, but you need them to be fairly sparing. So when taking pictures, try to be aware of what you might want them to say in your final film. I know that's asking quite a lot, but it depends how much you've scripted in advance. And when you're editing, you need to know precisely what you want these pictures and words to say. So therefore, you would expect me to say, write the script first before you start editing. When you're doing all of this process, remember that sometimes pictures say more and sometimes words say more. But between them, 1 and 1 makes 3, which is a silly way of putting that you know, you have to use these spaces, where you're going to put these words, where you're going to put these pictures, but together, the pictures and the gap in the words, wow, it all adds up, as in the first one. Do not describe what is happening on screen. We know that's obvious, we know it's true. We're talking about making better films here, but it's actually quite hard not to do. But supposing, you know, you have a potter building up the stuff on his wheel, you know, just at home, say, and there's a bit of water going over his clay. No point saying that's what we're seeing, but you would say the raw material for any potter is clay. Ah, that's what we're looking at. China clay from Cornwall is particularly malleable. Ah, that's where it comes from. Blah, 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 blah. So that's the stuff that you can't see, but you'd be very careful with using it. And always use nice, simple sentences, even if not a sentence. As Moira said, we were taught in school to write sentences, and I've spent my time up here saying bugger sentences. You know, if it's not necessary, it's not necessary. But it requires good research to filter out the interesting stuff, not just the stuff you have. So, and the final one is, we're talking about where to put the words and the pictures on the timeline. And remember that this is the most important thing you need to remember if you take it away tonight. he says. The strong pictures need weak, if any, words. Your words go on the weaker pictures. So it's a kind of thing like this. You've seen me do this before, I know, I've done it. And 100 clubs in the north have seen me do this. You know, strong pictures, weak words. Weak pictures, stronger words. And so it goes on like that. That's where you put most of your words, over the weak pictures and in the gaps. Leave the stronger pictures, the avalanche or whatever, you know. Oh yeah, no point talking over that. No point at all. Don't waste your time. I'm not talking here about music and sound effects, which of course might well lead the way in other ways in whichever part of the film we're on. But I'm not talking about that at this moment. Can we now go on to the next piece of film, Frank? I'm trying to make up some time here because I want to get to my final item, which is... Now what you're going to see now, I said to you earlier about introductions. You're going to see 4 introductions in about 6 minutes. A couple of them, some of you will remember seeing in terms of the films. But as Frank rightly says, you might not remember at all. The first one, we're back to Alaska on the first one, which is the film I made about Alaska. And it has an introduction which appears to be about something quite insignificant, but actually it's key to the whole film, as will become clear, but you're not going to see the whole film. The next one is one of the films I did for one of the scripts I did professionally on money, research and money. You've seen the film before, and I think I used a bit of it in Desert Island Films about 2 years ago. But it's one which they allowed me to be a little bit sort of poetical, if I like, at the beginning, just to draw people in. It was for Warburtons, the bakers, and it was a film, it was a nuts and bolts film for people who, when they went to Warburtons, were going to see bakery in computerized machinery being made, bread. And Warburtons have always, and still do, advertise their sort of homeliness and their recipe handed down the generations. But actually, you go there as a group and you see a factory producing food. Oh my God, really? So we had to have a kind of introduction which kidded them. And the next one is about an artist, and we go straight in with his voiceover, but it's clear what we're going to talk about because the opening few pictures are pictures which are paintings. And then you hear his voice. And he goes straight into it, but it's another way of taking us there. We don't know where he is, we know nothing about him, he's speaking. The reason I paint is blah, blah, blah. Right. And then fourth one is a film made by Finchley, I think, Finchley Film Club, and it's about their local talking newspaper. And it's a brave attempt at trying to be a little bit creative. They've got 1 or 2 good ideas in there, but oh God, visually it's a mess, and visually it's very clunky. You'll see what I mean and why I say it. But I sort of feel for them because they're trying hard, but eventually it doesn't work.
The lesson is that you should do unto others as you would have others do unto you. It's that simple.
You should do unto otters, yes, otters, as you would have otters do unto you. The otter in question is the sea otter, a small, friendly-looking creature found only off the Pacific coast of North America. Who would think the ancestors of this playful creature
would have such an important role in the making of what we know today as Alaska, a curiously Russian outpost of the United States of America. The sea otter's natural home is that vast ocean which separates the two nations, but which came so close to linking them. When, 250 years ago, the Russians began to hunt the sea otter for its luxurious pelt, they followed it eastwards until they reached the Alaskan coast. Imagine, several thousand miles from home, and the Cossacks are trapped by greed in one of the most inhospitable areas of the world.
I like to paint a sense of place and not a real place. So my paintings of Yorkshire are a sense of the Yorkshire Dales. The initial impetus is from a specific view, but then the painting develops and has its own life, and the initial image goes to some extent, and you rely on what the painting must do. And it is, after all, the painting which is the most important. And also, if people get some sense of something from it without me actually having spelt it out, then I think that's absolutely fantastic.
Bread, the staff of life, full of the natural goodness only nature can provide. Bread is a living product of the land. From the ancient Egyptians to modern times, it's given strength and energy to the world through protein, minerals, carbohydrates. Bread crosses all boundaries, all tastes. In Britain alone, we eat the equivalent of 10 million large loaves a day, in many different forms. It takes a treasury of experience to make a perfect loaf, and the secret of the very best bread is one that has been passed down from one generation to the next. It is the secret of Warburtons, bakers born and bred. What makes Warburton's bread so very, very different? The Warburton story began in Victorian Bolton in 1876.
The Haringey Phoenix Group have been based here in Wood Green since 1989, providing social and emotional support to visually impaired people. How would you cope with everyday life if you were blind or partially sighted? We know we would struggle to manage from a practical point of view, like walking in the streets, trying to find something we'd lost at home, cooking a simple meal. But what if we cannot tell the difference between this reaction and that reaction? It's not just about the functional. Judging the mood of the people around us is vital to having a fulfilling relationship. Visual impairment is a very common problem, particularly as we get older. There is a 5% chance that each of us will suffer significant sight loss in our lifetime.
My name is Tom. I'm the manager of Haringey Phoenix Group, a charity for the blind and partially sighted. We have activities throughout the week for the blind and partially sighted.
So there you are, I saw 4 introductions there. I'm sorry about Finchley at the end there, but you can see that they were trying. They had some ideas, didn't they? I don't know why we kept on seeing the camera people, and it went from one point to black and white and then to colour. And that awful big microphone and wind muff was not helpful, was it? But they've got the equipment together, but you see the point of the introductions, taking you into a film for the other 3, the sea otters, you know, but actually critical to the idea of the whole of Alaska, which was eventually sold by Russians to the Americans in the mid-1860s for 7 cents an acre, I think it was. The Americans didn't do a lot with it, apart from they're still doing it, mining it for oil and minerals and God knows what, and giving very little back. But okay, that's where the story goes. Warburtons, well, yeah, self-explanatory, I guess. A bit of poetic nonsense about bread, with some nice shots, etc. And my only grouse with that, as with all the business films I made, the voiceover is non-stop. They don't build pauses in because they haven't got time. And they're going to show it to you at 10 o'clock on a Thursday morning. They don't want bloody pauses and nonsense. Get on with it. Get on with it. Get on to the guts. So
who was the audience?
The audience for where?
Well, for the one you just mentioned.
The Warburtons. Well, was people going around the factory, groups of people, WIs, provosts, God knows what, going around how modern bread is made. And they go to these factories. All factories have these visiting groups, really, whatever you are.
Was Finchley making a...
No, Finchley was the talking newspaper one.
Escape money.
I don't know who that audience was, but I guess it was advertising the talking newspaper.
Okay.
To the blind. But
just wondering who the target was.
Yeah, well, your guess is as good as mine, really, because it's not obviously directed, is it?
One thing I found with that one, which is strange, because obviously it's for people that are partially sighted, and the fact that the guy with the microphone's got a check jacket on, a striped shirt,
and a spotty tie.
And a spotty tie. So it would have been better with a more, you know,
it was probably visually.
Yeah, because I think for visually impaired people that might have been a little bit.
We know.
Or he had no taste.
It's interesting. Every visually impaired person, I know a lot of them, can see different amounts and different things. So.
But we also know
stripes and that they can make out these kind of things. Some of them can, depending on what your visual impairment is.
But we also know one man who all the clothes he buys are black, so it doesn't matter what he puts on, he never mismatches.
Which is clever thing.
Well, I mean, I think it's like with people do sign language, technically, I shouldn't be doing sign language in a t-shirt because it's too busy, and you do it in the plain thing, so you see hands.
Yeah. But I mean, I was just showing it to you as a kind of introduction, and they were trying there, I think. But can we go on to the next one immediately, Frank? So how does all this go together on the timeline? I'm talking about pauses, and I'm talking about with emotion, and when you write, delivery, and all that stuff. So what we're going to do, we're going to look at half a page of script of a film, and this is the voiceover script, and the music at the top, just with some sound effects. Don't worry too much about that. But the numbers of the seconds of the film, didn't make the film from this, but I've analysed the film since, just to show you how it works, really, or to show anyway. So we see a bit of water. We're in Provence, so this is a sequence on the Camargue. So we cut to from somewhere else. This close-up yellow scum, it says. Well, that means a bit of yellow scum on the water, to let you know that it's a bit unsavoury water we're looking at. And then there's a second shot, grass and a scum pool. Bearing in mind, if you show similar shots, the second shot has less impact, the third shot has less impact, which is fine. You can still show them because that's part of a sequence, but that's where you're going to put your words. First shot, second shot, we've seen something like that before. Right, now words. So we get the second shot, and halfway through the second shot, the voiceover says, the Camargue is one of the great nature reserves of Europe. Pause. And somewhere in there will be the third shot, the branches of water. It's a similar shot, so it's not sort of If you're not paying too much attention to it by now, you don't need to, where the Rhone, after 500 miles, seeps into the sea. And there's a long pan of grey water here, pan right, over a spit of land. 14-second pans are tremendous for bits of voiceover, because very rarely are they going to hold the interest for every second. They start usually somewhere interesting, and then they move across some mountains or a bit of water, and in theory they should finish somewhere. But they're wonderful for the second half of this first sentence, I would say. So, seeps into the sea through a series of saltwater marshes called étangs. Pause, 4 seconds, because we're now to change the tone slightly. Another bleak shot with a bridge in it, bridge, bleak landscape, 5.5 seconds, which you bring up this towards the end of it. So after about 4 seconds, you're all looking at that shot. It can be flat and bleak, because we need to hit the next shot, then bursts into life. And that shot has to be on sunlit flamingos in the sky. You can imagine these pink flamingos lit up by the sun flying, and that's on the word bursts, because that's where the timing has to hit. So these can lead up to this. So they can all be cut to whatever they need to be to hit this. Whereupon there's a marsh warbler sound effect here, I see. So we now see a new shot, as opposed to lakes and muddy ponds. We see these flamingos for 6 seconds, okay? There's an 8-second gap here, from there to that. So this next bit begins just over this shot here. Flamingos in formation overhead. But it's a second flamingo shot, so it's not quite so dramatic as the first one. Hence, we come in, it's the flamingos that drew us down here. Now they're feeding in the water down over here. They are really white, but stay pink because of the shrimps they eat. And finish off the sequence with this shot here, 3 seconds, and then a finally flying shot right to left for 6 to 7 seconds. There's a 7-second gap until we come to now the little next sequence, which is close up 2 horses eating, just as symbolic of the Camargue as the bulls and flamingos are the famous wild white horses. By which time we're on to the second shot. They're only horses, so it's not too dramatic. And then we have 4 riders on horses, left to right, for 9.5 seconds. And so we've got plenty of time for that one to finish over that shot, and then a little bit of a pause towards the end of that shot there, but they are hardly wild anymore because there are 4 riders on them, so they're not all that wild. So you see, the gaps and where you put the words in relation to the pictures is absolutely critical. It's called editing, as you all know, and it's what you're doing when you're editing with a timeline. But that's why you don't need a continuous voiceover. You really do not. We're going to talk about delivery now. I've talked quite a lot about writing, and remember the first film we saw, and a lot of us would have done that, the same film, but we would have done it differently a bit. We wouldn't have squeezed the emotion and power out of it quite as much. And as Jeffrey says, we'd take an hour over every film. But you do have different voiceovers in you. You have different styles in you. We've all, you know, if you write a letter to a close relative, a son or a daughter, say, that's a very different letter from the one you'd write to the solicitor about next door's hedge. And you just can't help it. You're in a different mode, aren't you? You're imagining what you need to say. How do you need to write to this solicitor? You don't say, "Dear Chumpy Chops," you know, for the start off, as you might say to your son or daughter. But you might not, because you might be nice, whereas I'm not so nice. Or, you know, if you're writing a job application. "Dear Chumpy Chops, I like this job. I would like this job very much because..." So, you know, you just naturally fall into a different mode. So you can do it if you just think of your film. What sort of film is it? What is the basic idea? What am I trying to get across here? So, I'm on to number 32 then.
Yeah.
So, here, remember Seville. This is the second paragraph, but I've now, how about delivery? How are we going to say it? We're going to underline the key words. When I wrote scripts, even for other voiceovers, I would often underline words to let them know that's the word I want. So there we are, we're underlining it. Seville. You can't read it with those underlines and not say it with a bit of oomph in it. Is there any one Spanish name so full of atmosphere? You're not going to stress the word full. You could do, so full of atmosphere, but, you know, so full of atmosphere. Seville, you want to say it the second time, you're going to have to say it heavily. City of oranges, flamenco, sunshine, Moorish history, pause, and manana. And that's a sort of tramp asleep in a back alley or something, or just any Spaniard having a sleep in the back alley. The very heart of all things Spanish. And now a riot of colour and music and history and Latin excitement. You've got to say that with a kind of rhythm in it. And now the point, or is it just another concrete jungle? You've got to stress the word concrete to make that point quite quickly. So underline the words in your script, and actually, despite what I said, the actual words you underline are not so critical. You could have underlined the word full and not atmosphere. Is there any one Spanish name so full of atmosphere? So you see, you could make that phrase work either way. But anyway, it's up to you how you do it. Much of our home recording gear is in a corner of a room, and you're sitting at a table facing a desk. That's where we do our editing quite often. Computer is on against the wall. And the trouble is, you've got your microphone set up alongside your editing setup, and you're facing a wall. Well, you can't emote into a wall, can you? You know, you can't go, Seville, is there any one name so full of atmosphere? You can't do it. So I would say to you, stand up and speak as if you're in your lounge, which you might be, presuming some of you are rich enough to have a lounge. And imagine you've got one or two friends, if you've got friends. I know this is hard to imagine all of this now. A lounge, and B, friends. But they're on the wall. They're on that wall, the back wall, and this wall. So you're having to project to them slightly. And you like your friends, so you can say what you like to your friends. And they're not going to laugh at you, are they? So you speak as if to two or three friends, and now you can have a practice and then go. Put a smile in your voice. Usually you're making a film about something you want to get across to us, so you enjoy it. You don't have to. You might have been on holiday and had a terrible time. So don't bloody smile in your voice. Rant and rave in your voice. But okay, you know. Underline the key words, which we've covered. Act it, give emotion, colour and meaning. You're unlikely to go over the top. You might think Ewan McGregor was over the top, but I don't think he was for the subject and for the words. But you're not likely to go over the top. Some actors are not very good voiceover artists. The Warburton's man there was Robert Powell, but he does a lot of voiceovers, or has done over the years, and he knows how to modulate it pretty well. And whoever's going to speak it, if it's not you, somebody else, know the script and practice, 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 because there are different ways of saying these things, as you know. Maybe I've just got time to do Tom. Now then, Tom went into the park yesterday to ask one of the regular young soccer players there if he would like a trial with Manchester United. Wow, Manchester United. So the punch is right there at the end. Now imagine you've got some shots. You want to illustrate this. We'll change the words in a minute because they're not very suitable for what you want to do. Imagine you've got shots. Now, here's a man asking a soccer player there, he's not expecting it, would you like a trial with Manchester United? Wow. And the shots don't need to be particularly brilliant. They're just simple shots. They're Tom going into the park. You've got some general pictures, general views of soccer players. You've got some close-ups of soccer players. You'll get fined and arrested if you do this these days in the park, but nevertheless. And you've now got Tom on the touchline having a look. He's just doing this. He's looking, and then finally he's talking with a player. So let's just see how we can make that sequence work a little bit more powerfully. We're going to rewrite it. We're going to rewrite it in the present tense for a start. Holidays and things like that, try to put them in the present tense. Take your viewer there on this, snowy January night. You're talking about Tenerife or whatever. Take him there. We are here. Not yesterday we went and the following day we went. We go. We go. We do this. Now we're doing it with you as an audience. And here the same thing, it's action. Tom is going into the park with a mission. Mission is a good word, and you've got to pause after it. Mission has a sort of point to it. Something's coming up. You don't know what yet. You do because you're reading it, but the viewer doesn't. And it covers Tom walking into the park and the beginning of the soccer shots. Is the mission something to do with the soccer? Maybe. And you've got 2 or 3 soccer shots, really. Long distance, close-ups. Tom is now standing on the touchline and he's looking for one of the regular young soccer players there. Pause. There's a natural pause, you see, after the sentence. Tom, he is looking for one of the regular young soccer players there. You're expecting to see him looking and pausing. Cut to soccer action. A bit more close-up. And now, finally, Tom is talking with the bloke. He is offering a trial with Manchester United. Wow. And that's a bit punchier. Hope you can see that by rewriting it and placing it very carefully on the timeline with the pictures to build up a little bit of tension. And it's called editing. It's quite simple, really, when you've got your timeline. Not, you know what I mean? The mechanics of it are simple. And you've got time, you're in charge usually of the voiceover, if you know somebody's coming to do it or you're going to do it. You can lay the voice on the timeline first, and you can fine-tune the pictures and words to suit. And be prepared to do that, so that how you write it is how you say it, is how you edit it, and how you photograph it. And they all go together. Whichever comes first in your mind, often how you photograph it. You go on holiday, but you might have an idea. Michael Gough, who some of you know, makes very nice, well known at making nice, it's a weak word, sort of 4-star type holiday films, travel films. And he regularly does that, time and again. He goes with an idea. He's done a bit of research. When he goes, he's got an idea. He's prepared to change that idea when he's there, but he goes with the idea first of all. This is what he thinks he's going to make a film about. So he starts photographing on the first day with this in mind, but it might change. So have an idea. You need an idea, and is what we said at the very beginning, in order to make a better film. So, where are we going to next, Sheila?
Just look at the slide.
Look at the slide. I will now look at the slide. So, there you are. What we said earlier. A voiceover makes sense of the pictures. Film needs, well, it provides a pattern shape. Film needs an idea, an introduction. Evaluate these sequences. Strong pictures, fewer words, etc., etc. Use short, simple sentences. Don't waffle, be positive. Don't always use full sentences. Be very sparing with numbers and dates, which we've been covering. When you're writing, speak the words aloud. Maximum 2.5 words per second, but only for a short while. And script the pauses. And it brings you to 2 golden questions. What does the viewer want to know next? Be aware of that, but be aware whether you want to give it to him or not. Do you want to give it to him now, or do you want to hold a bit of tension? Give it to him later on. And the other one, which was what is not obvious from the pictures, the potter and all that stuff. So there you are. Documentaries need as much creativity as drama and animations. They really do. Now then, if you've got the energy and the time, I'd like to just talk a bit about titles. Is that all right? It's about a few minutes just about titles. Say yes. Good. I'm glad to say. Right. This week there was a lady MP jailed for fiddling a road. Who was driving the car? I think, yeah. Well, it just so happens that a few years ago there was another MP jailed for very similar things, and he was a Liberal MP, Chris Huhne, which you might remember. And for years his wife took the blame for speeding, but it gradually started getting out as a rumour that maybe she didn't. And he denied being involved. He denied that they were involved in a cover-up. And he denied it for over 12 years, for about 12 years. And he went to court twice, at expense, huge expense, to get the fact not to bring the case to court. And eventually a judge says, I've had enough, we might as well hear this case in court tomorrow morning. At which Chris Huhne pleads guilty, my lad. So, headline in one of the papers called it simply, The Man Who Ran Out of Lies. Yeah, isn't that brilliant? Tells that whole story that I've just been telling about in well, 6 words. The Man Who Ran Out of Lies. And I put to you humbly, that's the importance of a title, if you like, or of catching it. One, Les Miserables was, when it was voted a huge hit by the critics, one critic wrote a very glowing report, write-up of it, and the paper said, Les Mis, le bis. Yeah, it makes you laugh. It's clever, isn't it? It's only 11 letters, the whole bloody thing. Les Mis, le bis. It's brilliant, I think. And otherwise, we often put labels on, you know, Isle of Sunshine, Caribbean Caper, Yorkshire 2017. You know, and you think, no, that might be good filing system for on your own computer at home, but it's not going to make me want to watch your film. Yorkshire 2017, you know, one word is worth 1,000 pictures, he said. But, and also, your title, get it right, and it'll help you focus on what the idea of your film is, which I know, which comes first. Okay, the idea is the title, but you think, oh, I've got a good idea for a title, yeah. A, Y, Z. Right, yeah, and it'll help you focus. But there you are. A better film needs a little bit more substance. So,
David, would you say anything about titles, the positioning of them?
The positioning of them?
Yeah, at the beginning or part way in? Or...
Well, no, because sometimes it is better at the beginning. Television is famous for having 3 introductions on films, documentaries. It'll have a long montage about nothing, and then just from the whole series, you know, bits of, well, click shit, as one producer put it to me, and then they have the title, and then they start again, telling you what this particular program is going to be about. So they have another montage, and the voiceover says on this program, blah, blah, blah. And then finally they have a 3rd introduction because they get down to what this program is about. And so that's a frequent TV documentary thing. In fact, they're nearly all, you sit and watch them, if you ever watch these hour-long documentaries, and they'll have 3 introductions on at least. And how important are titles? Well, imagine we have 5 minutes left, which we do. Now, I've done this for you before, but not for a long time. So, which film do you want to watch? Ibiza or The Red Balloon?
Red Balloon.
The choice is yours. It's a 5-minute film. You've got one choice. Which do you want to watch? The Red Balloon. I might tell you, Ibiza could be about an animation, very nice animation, about a peanut vendor in Madrid. And it's quite a funny story, and it's brilliantly done. But no, you see, if you didn't think so, because of the title. Because that just seemed a little bit more colourful and interesting. All right, you see, you got it wrong once. Which do you want to watch? The Giant's Causeway or Pot of Gold? Pot of Gold. You see, you think that's just a flat old picture. I've been to the Giant's Causeway. Oh yeah, I was there. God, yeah, I know what it's about. Don't know what this is about, so I'll grab this. But they could be the same film, actually, couldn't they?
Yeah.
You know, because their Irishness, it could be. However, we'll do two more, oh, three more, because we've only got 2 minutes left. Right, do you want the night sky or the Stalker?
Well, it depends. If it was just before bedtime, I'd be watching the night. Because then I got to go to bed in a minute.
Bear in mind, you don't know what they're about, because we don't know what these films are about, do we? And we got a choice just from the title. But only you can tell which one you want to watch. But because this might be a bit intriguing, might be a good thriller, you don't know, even in 5 minutes. But okay, that might be a heavy documentary about the night sky, but those of you who are interested, can you be interested?
Yeah,
But-
definitely.
Okay, got something similar. Do you want the Pine Cone Line, or do you want Wrath of the Gods? That's a difficult choice, isn't it? What are we choosing? Wrath of the Gods. Again, it sounds elemental, it sounds mysterious, it sounds as if it's got something going for it, more than the Pine Cone Line. The Pine Cone Line does exist as one of these little mini railway lines in the south of England somewhere. Some of you may know it, I don't know where it is, down in Sussex or somewhere. So okay, and lastly, now then, do you want Cutting Edge or The Rug Makers of Amalfi? Now, poor old rug makers always get a laugh when I've done this in other clubs. And Cutting Edge, of course, could be the same film, couldn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, but it might not be. And if I said to you, well, the film's actually going to be an hour long, not 5 minutes, you're definitely going to pick that rather than that one, aren't you? Although on telly, they'd make an hour's film out of The Rug Makers of Amalfi, for sure, with 3 introductions. So there you are. That's how important I think titles are. So I hope you've got something to think about.
Yeah.
I'm sorry we had a late start. We had to miss a little bit out, but don't worry about it. And I hope it's been interesting. Anyway, thank you very much.